Hey everyone, welcome to our latest Trade to Black podcast. Thanks for checking in. Big day again for cannabis. A little bumpy volatility to say the least. Saw a sea of red. A couple companies finished strong going into the close. So why did this all happen? We'll break into it. So let's welcome in Anthony Verrill, millennial investor and TDR contributor. Good to see you. Good day.
Good to see you. It was a interesting day today. Real interesting day.
Back and forth. Benjamin A. Smith, lead financial writer. Good to see you.
Good to see you guys. Big day.
Yes. So let's get right into it. Bumpy all day long. So red day to say the least. So Ben, begin with you. What happened here?
So I think what happened is psychology of the market, it came into play. For the first time in several days, we had several, I don't want to say bearish, but stories that came out that were kind of cast out on the veracity of descheduling and safe banking. One had to do with safe banking vote being not next week, but the weeks thereafter, and that sort of conflicted with the imminent sort of narrative that had been going around. And another one had to do with some GOP senators signing on to prevent the DEA from rescheduling cannabis. And obviously, that brought in doubts that maybe this isn't as much of a slam dunk as people think.
Yeah.
So I don't think this really changes anything, but it definitely played on the psychology. And I think we had more sort of like a buyer's strike as opposed to anything, real selling that was material.
Yeah, that's for sure. Anthony, I look at this, like, let's face it. There was, what was there? The three stories from marijuana moment last 24 hours that I think caused a lot of like speculation. And, first story, what was it? Was released was the Senate committee vote on safe banking won't happen next week. So looking further into this, can you guys maybe, and Anthony, I'll begin with you, better define what exactly this announcement means for our viewers to, I guess, have a better understanding of what to expect next?
Yeah, I mean, so there was an article that came out last night on Marijuana Moment, and it was titled "Senate Committee Vote on Marijuana Banking Bill Won't Be Next Week."
Okay.
So it's a nuanced approach, I'm assuming, because a couple friends of the show were cited in the article, Don Murphy and Jesse Redmond, stating that there would be an article, or that there would be a potential vote on it next week around the 18th. This has come out to be false, judging by the insiders and what they're saying coming out of Washington. The fact of the matter is we had Sherrod Brown saying that there was going to be a markup and a vote within 6 weeks of the Senate being back in being back in session. That did not indicate that there was going to be a firm vote next week. So, I mean, this article, while it is factually correct, I mean, I can't think of anything out there other than it being clickbait and trying to get some uncertainty in the market.
You believe that?
I mean,
you believe that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. If you look at the follow-on headlines, what they reported on today as well, I mean, they followed this up with DEA head misspoke about Biden letter directing marijuana scheduling review. Now, when you read the headline, you think, oh, shit, is that the letter that the HHS sent to the DEA that was leaked? And that is actually in question of no one's really seen it. There's a Freedom of Information Act inquiry to disclose the letter, which is still going through the motions, and I'm sure that'll be granted in the next couple of weeks here. But you read in the article, and it is still factually correct. I mean, one thing Marijuana Moment does is they do some damn good reporting.
Yeah.
Their stuff is rooted in fact. It's cited, it's sourced, and it's coherent. But this letter that they're talking about is referring to Biden in his campaign speeches that were talking about rescheduling cannabis. That was misconstrued. So, I mean, that was another headline. I'm not going to lie. On that headline, I said, that's enough. I'm taking my MSOS calls off today. I had $10 October 20th short dated calls. I didn't want to get caught up in the psychology of the market. I mean, this is a very psychologically driven trade right now.
Yeah.
After I saw this headline, I was like, I'm taking the calls off. I'll watch what happens, look at the price action, and I can obviously reposition myself if I need to. After that, there was another Marijuana Moment article that came out. 14 GOP congressional lawmakers tell the DEA to keep marijuana in Schedule 1. Again, this is factually correct, but at the same time, this equates to 6% of the politicians that are not that are there. So while it is true, I mean, I'm of the opinion that that is a negligible constituency that's signing on against the recommendation. I mean, it's like Pete Sessions and a bunch of deep conservative Southern GOP senators and representatives. So, I mean, take it as you will. All of these headlines are true. All of these headlines are factually accurate. But as far as I'm concerned, and the tape would tell you today, they did psychologically shake investors in the sector.
6%, you said? 6?
Yes, 14 out of the 222, I believe.
Wow. Go ahead, Ben.
I would say that, to be fair, on Tom's behalf, I don't want to speak for Tom, but we sort of put that out there, and he did respond to one of our tweets, and he did note that he drew a sort of a parallel towards the co-sponsors of safe banking, saying that if 9 or 10 GOP co-sponsors mattered, why doesn't the 14 kind of thing? And there is sort of a point there. But I think overall, when you look at historically how much the GOP has been against cannabis, 14% is a rather weak number. So if they're coming in with this, it's a pretty weak beginning. Although I note that there's going to be a lot more opposition as we go on. And I think this was sort of like the calling card of people, of sort of like a reality check of certain investors saying, okay, now that they know that there's going to be some opposition. I think before, maybe some people thought, okay, this is smooth sailing, DA is going to rule and all that. They didn't really think about the other side, about the opposition that's going to mount to this. And I think it's going to be fairly formidable. Now, not to say that that's going to derail things, or that rescheduling to 3 won't happen, but there's going to be a lot of opposition to this, and there's going to be lawfare. And that's just sort of the way it is. And I
think that's
today.
I think that's a pretty valid point. You have there, Ben, but at the same time, like, this letter, you can damn well be sure was passed around both full offices. Maybe a broad, I think a majority of that 222 probably saw this letter and chose not to sign it. All they had to do was sign it if they agreed with it. And I mean, to only get 14 signatures, like, sure, it's there. It was expected by most of the people that signed on, but I'm pretty confident it's a nothing burger in the grand scheme of things.
He makes a good point. He makes a good point, though, about a lot of positive sentiment regarding 9 related to safe banking, and then to the 14 is what you said. Your response to that, Anthony?
I mean, I think it's I responded to him in real time. I think it's a valid argument. I didn't have too much to say against it. I think it's valid.
Yeah.
Like I said, I mean, I like and I respect Marijuana Moment. I think they're good reporters. You can't really argue with most of the stuff that they put out there. I ran a media company in the cannabis space that I sold. I mean, clickbaity headlines pay the bills. But the one thing that is for certain is you click on one of their articles and you read it. It's site and source, the kingdom come, and you can't really argue against it. They are rooted in fact.
Reminds me of the Michael Oher saga that's going on with the family from The Blind Side, about how these publications talked about the demand and all this, but in every single story, they forgot to outline that he made $36 million in his football playing career, which...
Yeah. I mean, there's always two sides to a story.
Hey, look at there. There's our Benzenga friends. Hello, what's going on? Good to see you. Luca writes, Canopy back to reality, and why not? The company was up, what was it, 81% yesterday? 81%. They were in the red today. But before we talk about today, what do you guys make of stock going up 81% one trading day?
It doesn't surprise me. Like, I sat at my desk and watched Tilray go from $3 to $300. I mean, I watched Canopy go from like $1.25 to $60. And I mean, these were aggressive God candle moves, and Canopy was Canopy for a day.
Yeah.
It's now it's now coming back to earth.
Do you go that far, but coming back down to earth? Like, it's still performing well, even though it was down.
Yeah.
Ben, sorry.
I kind of look at this as being like it's sort of leading into the price action we saw today. Because when you see equities like Canopy and Aurora Cannabis, right, make these type of moves, and Aurora's just been on fire over the past couple of days. When you see the LPs that are not really leveraged to the actual news flow, there's some indirect benefits that they're going to get and all that, but not directly right now leveraged to it. And you see them move like that, it is probably the move in the market's probably very mature at that point, right? That's what I have on alert at that point. I'm looking at how long can this sustain, because Aurora Cannabis did almost 200 million shares Aurora Cannabis. And sure, they had those good headlines. They're purchasing 9 million in convertible debentures back, and they project positive free cash flow. And we've heard that before, so that remains to be seen. But those type of moves definitely signal that the current rally as constructed is getting pretty mature. And whether it coincided with today's headlines or not, I don't know, but definitely a mature rally. We were due for a pause, and that's what we got today.
Yeah, I'm looking right now. Aurora finished on the day, if I'm correct, with
up 5.5%.
It was still
traded, yeah, dollar weighted. I mean, traded close to $200 million worth of stock.
What does that tell you about cannabis retail?
What that tells me is I can't wait for the day that these tier 1 MSOs are sitting on the NYSE and the NASDAQ.
No kidding. That's a really good point.
Serious liquidity is going to be able to come in if these Mickey Mouse names are getting driven up like this.
I think what it also tells you too is they got a good PR team, because they put out that headline. I can almost guarantee you that headline, they're waiting for the right time. And with the market sort of booming right now, any sort of positive headline like buying back your debentures, positive free cash flow that you're projecting, when obviously that's been their issue for the past several quarters. When you put that out there, they coincided at the right time, and they caught that momentum move. So good on them. So they got a good PR team there.
Ben, one thing, like I touched on this in a few comments in some of our podcasts earlier this week, but we were involved in a spaces last Friday with Dan, the chart man, the chart guys, and Jesse Redmond over at Water Tower Research. Jesse had some good comments to say about tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 companies in short-term trading right now. But do you want to elaborate on what he was referring to with some of those? Because I thought it was really helpful the way he explained it.
Yeah, he was referring to the leverage that some of these companies have. He was referring to essentially that the tier 2 cannabis, like outside of like the Curaleafs, the Crescos, like outside of the top 6, they have been moving the best, like the Columbia Cares, the Air Wellnesses, because they are most leveraged to the move of rescheduling and of safe banking. So if those two catalysts happen, they are more constrained on the balance sheet, and they would be the beneficiaries of such a move, right? As maybe not having those debt issues or blow-ups on the balance sheet. And also they had been moving down the most during the current drawdown, right? They moved it down 90+% as opposed to GTI, which moved down like 70%, right? So they also had more torque on the upside to any sort of good news that was forthcoming. So they were leveraged the most, and they could also fall the most if those catalysts don't come through.
Right. And then what was some of the stuff he had outlined again pertaining to the big MSOs about the long-term trajectory regarding GTI, TrueLeaf? Memory serves me correctly. I forget what he had mentioned again, but it was really helpful with regards to companies that are cashed up in a long-term sustainable position. But he was mentioning something along those lines again.
Yeah, I think he was mentioning that it may be a good idea, in his opinion, to get into some of the tier 1s from the tier 2s and sort of rotate some capital because they are less constrained on the balance sheet, because they are a little less leveraged, and they're a little bit more quality issuers, quote unquote. That it might be a good idea to deploy some capital there and move away from the tier 2s, or at least lighten a little bit. And I think he has a point on both fronts.
Yeah. One thing I want to bring up, okay, we can talk about some of the companies. I think pretty much everybody knows who is in the red. Air Wellness, would they finish? Because I saw them rebounding strong right as the
Air Wellness was down about 22% on the low and of the day, finished about even. Full disclosure, I'm a shareholder in Air Wellness. I think a couple of the other hosts are shareholders in Air Wellness. So, I mean, this is obviously not financial advice, and we all hold positions. But yes, I mean, it was a buying opportunity that was missed. I mean, shit, I'm looking at about a 50 cent move off the low in the stock. So yeah,
Alex,
it was a buying opportunity.
It actually finished up in Canada 1%. And I remember looking at this real time. That was one of the ones that I was watching in case we got a dip, and it actually triggered on the levels that I wanted to buy, but it wasn't confirmed on the MSO ETF. It didn't quite get there. So I kind of waited and hesitated, and ended up not getting that huge rebound. Like we're talking like 90 cents or about 65 US off the low. I mean, that's a huge rebound.
Alex Stetson, good to see you, brother. You comment a lot. Good call on Air, Anthony. Do you think it has more room to run, is what he writes, comments?
Could run or could drop another 25%. I mean, I got in early. I got in on my fundamental thesis. I don't think anybody should follow what I do. I just make moves with my own money. If I knew it had room to run, I'd be doubling down on it.
Yeah.
But that's like I said, that's not financial advice, and I mean I'm sticking to it. I think it's got plenty more upside if you do your research and look into their cash flows and what they're currently trading at. And I think it's a good name. But I do think that the chart guys had a very good thesis with rotating into quality. I think going into the True Leaves and the GTIs and the Veranos of the world, going into, I don't want to say peak euphoria, but the other leg of this might outperform, because don't forget that these tier twos do have debt issues on their balance sheet. They are being restructured. They are being assessed, but these companies are probably going to raise capital at some point in time. And if and when they do, I would expect a correction in the stocks.
Yeah.
You know what? Anthony brings up a good point for our viewers too. Look out. We are in a prime zone for private placements right now, with some of these equities up 150%. In the case of Air Wellness, 350%, 375%. This is prime territory for private placements. So you got to be cognizant of that. And
Can you elaborate?
Necessarily mean it'll happen now. They might elect to wait till after, the catalysts come through and, raise at higher levels to avoid dilution. It's hard to say, but it could happen at any point. So just keep that in the back of your mind. If you're thinking about initiating your position, if you're more conscious about price points in your portfolio.
Yeah. Can you give me an example, like private placement? Like you're thinking there are going to be some big blocks that are being purchased here in the next little bit?
Yeah. I mean,
Tim brought it up. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, the thing is if you're looking at from a valuation perspective, raising equity, you've got to be careful if you're these MSOs. I mean, we're talking well into the 9 figures, a lot of the debt positions on these companies. So just do the math. Like if you're worth 400 million and you go and raise 100 million in equity, I mean, that's a huge dilution, the dilutive event.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen now. I think we need to get a little bit more euphoria in the space, but I would not be surprised if you see some of these guys raise capital relatively soon.
Yeah. Hearing more.
You got to be careful.
Yeah. Let's see what happens even to SAFE. You got to think, how bad would it make Schumer and Booker look if we get rescheduling before any kind of movement has been made from a banking aspect? And from what I'm hearing is that anything topic-wise related to SAFE, Chuck Schumer is getting back to people right away. Who knows what the timeline is on that, but that's very encouraging to see that this is becoming more and more of a priority. Timeline-wise, it's anyone's guess, but step in the right direction, right?
I tend to think of, that could be the case, and I don't doubt your contacts. I tend to think about what's provable and what's not provable, and that's sort of in the realm of people projecting what they want to project, and it may be true, it may not be true. I'm not saying it's not, but that could be the case. But I mean that's not something you should really base your investment decision on, rumors and stuff like that. Stick to the facts, and we keep saying that on the podcast. Stick to the known facts, and you'll be okay. You'll be able to maneuver this space pretty good.
Why didn't Dan Aarons purchase shares yesterday? Is he suspecting a more considerable pullback? Love to help you out there, Luca. Don't know the answer to that one, brother. Happy to reach out to Dan, but that's anyone's guess.
Well, there were no inflows yesterday, I don't think. Were there?
No, there were no inflows. I mean, one thing I also want to point out is the headlines today some of them were about SAFE. Some of the uncertainties about SAFE. This rally was not started by SAFE. This rally was started by the HHS recommendation.
100%.
Going to the DEA. The HHS DEA recommendation and the rescheduling does not need to go through the functions of government. It doesn't have to go through the House, doesn't have to go through the Senate. It goes through the agencies, and then it's signed off by the big guy, and he gets to take credit for it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a very good chance, if we're talking about probabilities, that rescheduling happens over SAFE.
Yeah.
That's a very, very big possibility.
We've had some people reach out to us, and even Benzenga, good friends at Benzenga. What about the stock I call the Apple of the cannabis industry, Planet Holdings? This very, very interested stock right now amongst many investors. Do you guys follow this closely?
Planet 13?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I would more so call MedMen the Apple of cannabis. If you're talking about retail experiences, I think MedMen had a very, very solid retail experience. Nationwide, I think Brady Cobb picked up a hell of an asset in Florida that he turned into Sunburn. What I do like about Planet 13, though, is they picked up VitaCan, giving them 20 plus stores in Florida.
Yeah.
They're not going to deploy their mega store that they have in Vegas, obviously statewide in Florida. I'd look to see probably 2 or 3 of those, probably in the Miami-Dade County, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach area, and then over in Tampa. And then the rest will probably be satellite stores, nothing near the Planet 13 experience. But I welcome them into Florida. I don't think they can do a lick of difference in Florida unless rec hits. Coming in right now and trying to compete with the people that are in this market, you better be a top tier competitor. And I mean, VitaCan wasn't. Planet 13, they don't really have their own brands. They aggregate brands in the Vegas market. It's a Costco of cannabis. It's a hell of a store and an experience, but it is unique to the Las Vegas Strip. I don't know if they're going to be able to come into other markets and create that same buzz, hype, and experience, which is what they're known for.
Now, just to add to that, that's part of the reason why I haven't been traditionally a buyer or of this stock, because the whole mega store, superstore thing never really made sense to me in a market that deals with price compression, that deals with we see in the Canadian market. What's doing really well over here? It's High Tide, and High Tide is bare bones.
Good point.
As Bruce Linton has commented, throw a can of paint, slap some paint on the door, no frills, and that's what seems to sell in a very price sensitive market. And Planet 13, some of their mega stores, doesn't really have that. They don't have that cost advantage. Not to say that it can't work, and as Anthony points out, they can't make their whole model on that. So they better have some brands, and they, a lot of their stores better not be of the mega store type where things are going to be a higher price than the regular no frills kind of location.
Yeah. Anthony, you brought up Brady Cobb's name. We actually had a conversation with him. It's going to be up actually on our YouTube channel tomorrow. It's really, really good podcast that you're going to want to listen to regarding his company, Sunburn Cannabis, and as well the current landscape of adult use in Florida and what Governor Ron DeSantis' views are involved in that. And obviously there's some pretty public information where he stands right now, but there's more that meets the eye and there's more stories to this. And he brought up Iowa could be a factor in this and how he looks at it with his presidential campaign right now, and how obviously it's not legalized within that state and he needs votes from Iowa. So you wonder if he at any time steps down from this campaign, could we see a switch in his views and how adult use may come to fruition within the state of Florida?
Yeah, I mean, I think if the thesis is correct that he's trying to speak to Iowans with his presidential aspirations, then yes, I think that he tells the Florida Supreme Court to push it through if he doesn't have to worry about the campaign trail anymore. If he does, we're at the mercy of the Florida Supreme Court that's got 5 appointees by DeSantis, and I think it's truly a coin flip, as Brady alluded to today. That being said, I mean, there's a lot of bullshit out there about DeSantis's cannabis views, and let's just be clear. The Florida market has flourished under Ron DeSantis. The Florida market has broadened out under Ron DeSantis. He had smokable flower as well as several other products in the categories come to market under his guidance. Ron DeSantis is not a foe of the cannabis industry.
Yeah.
He might parrot that on a national stage, but if you really want to get down to brass tacks, Florida is probably the strongest medical market in the country. So the writing's on the wall.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that adult use gets through, as that's been a part of my thesis for names such as True Leave, Move, and Air. And Sunburn would also, they're private, but Sunburn would also be a huge beneficiary of Florida rec. But we'll see. I mean, I agree with Brady. I think it's a complete coin flip. But I didn't think about it until we spoke with him, that it might be DeSantis just trying to virtue signal to the voters in Iowa.
Yeah. Gives you a real idea as to how bad these companies that are already in there want this and need this. Like, what was the number that he was it 40 million, Ben, that Kim Rivers from True Leave has put forward towards lobbyists for this initiative?
Yeah, I think this Safe and Smart campaign, we're looking at $39 million over the life of that campaign, stretching back to late 2010s. So they put a lot of resources into that to deliver. They fell a little bit short in 2020, but now they're good this time. And it looks like they got enough signatures. Now it's just all about the Supreme Court and Florida, and we'll see what happens. But it would be a shame if this didn't happen in this particular state, because it's such a good state, such a
this could
ideal
be
state for cannabis.
The best state in America, I think.
With the tourism, absolutely,
it's going to be
140 million tourists per year.
Yeah.
That's a staggering number.
Florida will be the biggest market in the United States, unless New York gets its shit together and just goes gangbusters.
Yeah.
I think New York could be close second.
How do you
full adult use?
I don't know how you fix New York. There's 1,300 legal dispensaries in Manhattan alone.
So like we had said with Brady, I mean, I truly believe that the regulatory bodies in the state of New York, and I'm not talking about the OCM, I'm talking about the actual police departments, and the regulators are going to go after the landlords. And if you go after the landlords, that problem is going to get sniffed out real quick. They're handing out $10,000 per day fines to landlords that are enabling illegal pot shops to have leases.
That changes things in a hurry.
That changes things very quickly. I turn a blind eye until you start hitting me in the pocket $10,000 a day.
No kidding.
As a landlord, and then I change my tune very quickly.
Yeah, good point. All right. Like I said, Sea of Red today. Canopy down 20%, Tilray down 12%, Cresco was down just over 11%. Green Thumb down 6, almost 7%. Chronos down 6.25%. Trulieve was down 5.83%.
This is healthy. I mean, I can take single digit red days.
All right, so
we might have single digit red days tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know what? Okay. The thing to remember too is like this was a buyer strike, I think, today, at least from an experienced viewer of the price action. I look at this as a buyer strike. It wasn't like a material event happened that was super negative. Descheduling, there was cast out on descheduling and this thing, cratered. It wasn't like that. This is like a normal pullback. It's some negative headlines. So buyers just pulled back. And to me, that is very normal. And until we are below 725 ish, like that would be sort of the red line that people should look at. Right now, I think to me, this looks like just a normal pullback.
Yep.
I like that term, buyer strike. You need to trademark that.
Yeah. Well, you can see right off the open, there was no inflows last night. So no capital got deployed early. Like I've been watching the tape very, very closely. We've been having like huge blocks, like on open. We're talking like 50,000 shares. I think I saw like 1 million share order at one point. I'm pretty sure I saw that on my level 2. So it's like we have these massive orders just gobbling up shares at the start of the opening session over the past few days. We didn't have that today. Today we had, a couple very small blocks and then got eaten through, and then it drifted down. So we didn't have that same, like buyers were pulling back, and why wouldn't they? When you start the day out with those headlines after like a 90% move in MSOs, I mean, it's natural.
All right, Ben, then from a chart standpoint, the way things closed today, what can you anticipate heading into tomorrow?
It's always hard to say. I think that today did a good job of sort of throttling the momentum. So I think, we may not have that burst of euphoria, at least until we get more positive headlines. So I think, we're sort of in a consolidation period.
Okay.
It would be my guess. Again, anything above 725 is fine at this point. I think is okay and normal. If you look at more granular technicals, I would say, the 780 area would be kind of the next thing to be important. If we get through that, then, maybe we are going for that test. But overall, I think this is a normal, healthy pullback to me. And we're subject to headline risk. And today the headlines didn't work in our favor. So, if they return, the conditions are for a continuation is definitely possible.
Well, this is what we said a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. We're going to see a lot of attention towards this industry, but it will get bumpy at times. And this is what we're in, but we're still in decent shape compared to where we were a month ago, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's night and day.
Yeah.
I mean, a month ago, we were sitting on our thumbs just waiting for something to happen. And with the HHS letter, it finally happened.
Yeah.
And just one more thing, too, I'll add. If this was a true negative material down day, like God candle down, where you have to be really concerned, you would see the issues in Canada where the original listings took place. You would see those getting trounced. What we saw today is Air Wellness, for example, perfect example. It got trounced. It was down 22, 23%. It finished green on the CSE. Like it actually finished up. So it just shows you that there are buyers of the underlying shares. And if
Yeah.
this was true, crazy, downside selling, people throwing in the towel, these things would be finishing near the lows. You wouldn't see a lot of the rebounds. A lot of the other stocks that didn't quite make it that far, they paired gains. Like GTI paired gains by half. Purely, it was down. It paired gains by like 2/3. There's a lot of pairing that happened at the close.
Anthony, you bring up a good point, though. When I started naming off a lot of the names and how they're in the red minimally. So this is actually not a bad sign. If we're down 25, 30, 35%, it's concern, but you're seeing a little bit of a benchmark, as to your point, the 7.25 to be mindful of, Ben. But we're in all right. We're in okay shape.
I had us selling off into the close. I thought this move was going to be exacerbated down to the downside. And we saw like carnage, like 15, 20% down across the board.
Yeah.
And I want to see what happens at inflows. I'm sorry to interrupt. Yeah. I would like to see what happens at inflows. We didn't have any yesterday. I'll be curious to see whether we actually get inflows, because it was a good opportunity to get in at, MSOs at 7-8% down, or whether people are still kind of shocked and, most of the money has come through, and whether inflows are minimal. So that will be my thing tonight. Jungle Java, shout out to you. Great work on Twitter, on X. And I'll be looking out for that tweet tonight.
Good stuff. Alex Stetson again. I'm curious to know if you guys think that companies like Air, Terracin, and Jushi will pass their all-time highs within a few years. Sorry, Trueleaf. Sorry.
I mean, I'll speculate. Trueleaf, I would say yes. I think that they are going to fortify their positions in Ohio and Pennsylvania. I think that they are actually going to catch lightning twice and make a hell of a market out of Georgia. And if Florida adult use hits, they are going to be a cash fucking cow.
Yeah.
From that business.
Yeah.
I think Trueleaf could take out the all-time high years from now. And we're talking 3 to 5 years, I'm assuming, not like next year. Air and Jushi, they've got debt, a lot of it. I think they've got some things to figure out. I could see Air doing that as well. Air is in a bunch of really good markets. Jushi, I'm not a fan of at all. I don't like their management. I don't like their company. I mean, I'm not a fan of Jushi. All things considered.
Looks like Jushi won't be on anytime soon.
No. I'm honest. I'm a fucking open book when it comes to this stuff.
Well, appreciate the feedback. Ben, you have any feedback on that?
Yeah, I think if Trueleaf could potentially get there, it still has a long way to go. It still has like another 450, maybe 500% to go, somewhere in that range. So, but I think if you get the sort of trifecta of catalysts of 280E removal, you get Florida rec, and then the advancements in different states that, expansion of the footprint and doing well in those particular jurisdictions, I could see it happening, because just Florida alone, without 280E, they are just going to be an absolute juggernaut. We're probably talking about revenues annualized, what, 2 billion, maybe even more, right? Like just in.
So I think about it like this. What's the all-time high on Trueleaf? I think it's like 36 or something around there. So it's, let's say 5.25 times where it's at right now. So that puts Jushi at a $6 billion valuation. That's attainable. I mean, I think that's, like I said, this isn't financial advice, but I think that's attainable. I mean, I see Trueleaf being a $2 or $3 billion annualized run rate business. If all of those markets hit.
With an effective tax rate that's now down to 23, 25%, somewhere around that range, right? There's going to be some margin compression with everybody. It'll normalize around the 30, mid 30s, 40, but still, I could definitely see when you do the napkin math, I could see it going, that doesn't seem so expensive at that point. The 6 billion market cap.
No.
Trueleaf all-time high is 50.
Did it get that high?
$50. Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say it was higher than 36.
Was it 50
US? So I mean, I thought I didn't. 50 US. So even if it hits $50, that's still, I mean, that's like 7.5 times where we're at right now. That still puts it at a little under a $9 billion valuation. At a $3 billion run rate, they're hitting that valuation.
Yeah.
Unless these companies just go to shit, margins go to zero, and they trade like a commodity.
Well, think about this,
which is possible.
What do they have? They have a 40% market share in Florida.
Yeah.
Adult use, $6 billion market. Do the math, and that's one state.
I think they'll be pulling $1 billion to $1.5 billion out of Florida alone if adult use hits.
I think even more if it's
if they trend down to what 20, Florida's what, $6 billion market right now?
Potentially. And I mean, these are this is figurative. This isn't, it can be a $6
what is it right now
market.
with just medical?
I want to say it's about 2 and change.
2 and change. Okay, so if rec comes in, probably double that, maybe a little bit more. Obviously, probably more actually. You're looking at what if it's 6 billion and their their market share goes down from 40 and normalized to like say 25, 30, then $1.5 billion is definitely attainable. I think even if they slowly grind down to 25%, which is still a huge market share total in that state.
Retza writes, any thoughts or correlation risk with the broader market on how things will perform, I assume, going into tomorrow and later this week?
I don't think there's a lot of correlation. You've seen even to the downside. We had days when the market was up, S&Ps are up 2%, Qs are up 2.5%. MSOs is down 3%. And I think it was actually Jesse Redmond. So shout out to you, who pointed out in a graphic that the correlations, at least even before this rally, haven't been very high. So the market is not very correlated with the broad market right now. Of course, correlations could change. It doesn't mean past performance is going to mimic future performance. But right now, I think this is its own entity right now. It's all headline driven. It's all news risk. I don't see a lot of correlation with the market right now. I mean, obviously, if we have a huge drawdown, everything's going to go all down. But I think mostly it's not correlated.
Lori Strauss, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, added 33% to my position on air today in the pullback. I think the stocks that have done the best will continue to do the best in the future if the MJ rally continues. They very well may. Who knows?
I mean, that's I missed that move, unfortunately, but that was a hell of a trade if you got in on the lows on air today.
Holden writes, what do you guys think of Verano? Could be a bigger multi-bagger here, considering their run rate and shares outstanding. Their CEO doesn't publicize much, though.
Once again, not financial advice, but I think Verano's a hell of a stock.
Yeah.
I think it's got the same. I think it's got comparative upside to TrueLeaf.
Yeah. Had some good conversations.
It's a clear cut T1. Tier 1.
Yeah. Darren and Aaron, they've been good guests on. Very calculated.
Great guys.
People.
Yeah. Great guys. I like both of them. They're both good conversation.
All right. Holden, Lori, Reza, Alex, Benzenga crew, Luca, Chadwick, Really Reels. Writes, I've already picked out my color of my Porsche. All right, congrats, brother.
People counting the dollars before they cash in, eh?
Be careful. Anyways,
be a Turbo S, not a Boxster.
Not a Boxster fan?
No.
You
gotta buy a real Porsche if you're gonna get a Porsche.
Yeah. Hope you didn't pick Aaron Rodgers to be your MVP this year. God, that was awful.
I didn't draft him in any fantasy team.
Fourth play. Poor guy.
Is there any word how much he's out for? Is he out for?
I think it might be a torn Achilles, and if he tore his Achilles, he's probably gonna retire.
Yeah.
Oh, he's gone for the year for sure. Is it torn
Achilles?
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
They said it's looking like it.
A reminder of this podcast, all views of the Trade of Black podcast and the guests on this podcast are purely opinion. You should not treat any opinions expressed by us guests as investment advice, and the views on this podcast are solely intended to be informational and are not investment advice. Just information, people. All right, guys. Appreciate the live stream here today. Let us know what you think. We're thinking of doing this live stream every Tuesday and Thursday of each week. If you like that, then we can get that out. We love obviously coordinating back and forth with you, the viewers, leaving comments below. And it's something we want to consistently do each and every week. So let us know what you think. And as we start to branch out with this live stream, we'll have some cool guests on as well. But guys, appreciate it. And let's see how things go tomorrow.
Awesome. And remember to hit the like button on the YouTube channel. Definitely appreciate that.
Good stuff. Subscribe too. Appreciate the subscription. Take care.
That as well.
Thanks, guys.